everyone.
Hello, how are you?
Hi.
Adnan?
Good weather.
Good.
That's usually by Ian.
Let's have a discussion. So, I think it might be interesting for you also to probe a little bit more on specific issues or find out a little bit more what our plans in specific places might be. But I think just in terms of the broad implications of what happened over the last days, I think there was already a realization by the end of last year that the whole scenario for the energy future has evolved fairly radically in the last few years. I think it's unprecedented in any energy sector that change has happened in such a short period of time in terms of innovation, cost declines, deployment and so on. But what has really ramped this up is the Paris outcome and the implications of the climate agenda for our energy future. And I think that has made a qualitative difference that really reverberated through our assembly. I think it was a feature of the World Future Energy Summit. It was the starting point for discussions for virtually everybody who was there. And what we found is that although the agency is growing very fast, and we have close to 150 members, another 30 or so in the process, there were new countries coming. I met with Paraguay, which is not yet a member. The Paraguay minister indicated that they're really speeding up their membership process. I met with Costa Rica, it's finalizing their membership process. And we expect the big countries like the two remaining big countries, Brazil and Canada, to be in the process also. So I think we're moving towards universality, and it's a recognition that this is a global issue. It's an issue of great consequence for our future. And it has, after Paris, been very clearly positioned as probably one of the most compelling solutions for the climate issue that we have at hand today, which is feasible economically. And I think that's a game changer. Up to Paris, we had marginal inputs into the climate discussion. In Paris, with our partners and with the support of the French government, we made renewable energy as a centerpiece for discussion in Paris. And I think the political importance of that was very, very relevant. We had a huge impetus out of that. So we did some new things this time. We had an innovation this year where we started for the first time the legislators part of the assembly, which will grow over time. But we had 30, 40 legislators from around the world who are involved in energy legislation in their countries, who are absolutely committed to their agenda and are partnering with us as an information resource for their national decision making. So I think there are going to be some implications for that. We elevated our work with the regions, so energy transformation of Africa, the transformation of the islands, the mapping of energy trajectories in developed and developing economies. All of this has really been elevated. Up to this point, hydro has been a less prominent part of our work, but here we are starting now to really start to focus on hydro and look at sustainable hydro as a real option for the future, knowing that a large part of clean energy potential in developing countries is hydro. And that has to be a part of the mix and model conditions under which that should happen. And that is a fairly transformative issue because hydro becomes the enabler for variable renewables having larger shares in the system over time. So all of these things were happening. An interesting new development is we've been talking about innovation a lot, but these two new initiatives in Paris, Mission Innovation, which is the government R&D and the Breakthrough Coalition, Bill Gates and fellow entrepreneurs, holds a lot of promise for the medium term. But the point we are making is the technology is already mature for most of the solutions we need for right now. So I think we ended the assembly on a note of hope. My sense is that there was also a lot of excitement among delegations, among our partners, among the organizations that participated. and a real sense that we are participating in the transformative agenda with positive outcomes for our global society. And that's a big thing, and it's a very motivating thing to be part of. So,
questions?
sure.
So, on so many levels, my opinion is that consumer, business, political level, one of the biggest barriers to faster renewable energy growth is simply misinformation and lack of awareness, lack of understanding about how competitive renewable energy has become, and electric cars as well as part of that. What would be, if you could do three key points, what would be some like 3 key points that you think need to get out to more of the media, to more of the public, to understand and to propel this movement forward? And I'm asking you because you are, in my opinion, one of the absolute top 4 communicators on renewable energy, and I think you just always put it in such perfect words.
So now you've driven everything out of my mind in that phrase. I think the first is we have to put in people's mind that the cost declines in renewables are more important for the future of energy than the price falls in oil. That's one. And renewables for power generation are already dominant. Oil has been irrelevant in the words of one government for renewables. So that's one. Second, I think, is that this constant negative messaging you get from incumbents whose business models are being challenged about the unreliability of renewables, about the variability of renewables, about the system costs of renewables, are not true, because we have real life experience and models about the deployment of renewables at higher and higher levels that have been absolutely stable. And the example I like to give is East German transmission region under the 50 Hz TSO. I've visited this. The guy has achieved, at the end of last year, 46% penetration of variable renewables. He's done it without storage. He uses flexibility mechanisms. His monitoring and prediction of insulation regimes and wind speeds in real time is within 2 to 3% error. And he's doing it at low cost, and he has the most reliable system in Germany. So you have a system that's almost half variable renewables, that is the most reliable and one of the most cost effective in an advanced country. So I think that's the second thing, is about its cost, reliability and system integration, and system costs. And the third is that if we are going to maintain the ambition of staying under 2 degrees centigrade, it cannot be done without a major move from renewables investment. These are, for me, the 3 most important issues that we need to get across in this market. So I think that that makes a big difference in how people perceive this.
The other night at the Financial Times panel, they asked for everyone's wish list, and yours was, I have this right, eliminate bureaucracy and delay around multilateral finance.
That was in the panel in WFES.
Okay.
I was trying to be a little provocative.
Yeah. So, what's the problem, and how do we solve it?
I think that the current multilateral financial regime has been good at addressing longer-term development challenges. For renewable energy, you need a completely different operating procedure and mindset. If you are in a situation where in 5 years the cost of a technology reduces by 80%, you cannot wait 3 years to make judgments on a project from year 1 to year 3, because all the conditions around it change. So we need to have a much better understanding of the transaction costs and the delays in project approval processes and delays in project selection and appraisal processes. So on the one hand, I think multilateral financial institutions need to invest much more in project development processes, which lead to bank-ready projects, investment-grade projects. And secondly, they need to be able to disperse money in real time that takes advantage of the moment in time for renewables investment. And that implies changes in the way they operate. So if you take, for example, the Green Climate Fund, of course, it's still very much a political scenario, and we've had 5 years of development of the GCF. We have $1 billion in the bank, 9 more pledged, and in all that time, we've approved projects for about 180 million, and not one has yet been disbursed. So I can understand that at the front end of creating an institutional framework, these delays happen, but we can't afford that to become an operating procedure of the GCF. It has to be agile, it has to be nimble, it has to be able to get financial solutions out of the door quickly.
So you have in the report here that renewable energy capacity has grown 85% in the past 10 years. What's your goal for the next 10 years? What would be a realistic, practical aim for 10 years from now growth?
It would be great to give you a slogan, but I think everything we've seen with renewables is that each market has tremendous specificity and particularity about it. There's no country that's like another country. So, by giving you global numbers, risk becoming meaningless. But what we can say is about the rate of change. And I think the rate of change up to now has been pretty phenomenal, but we expect to see an acceleration in the rate of growth, because I think the sense of opportunity among countries and the business case for the technologies has never been better than now. Many countries, especially, I think the growth is going to be in emerging economies where energy demand is growing fast. So we are going to see a lot of infrastructure decisions being taken in the next 2, 3, 4 years, which are going to define the energy sector for the future. So the combination of the business case for renewables, together with the risk of stranded assets and fossil generation, is creating a whole new dynamic. So we would expect even the rate of growth to double.
You made a similar point on that panel where you noted the top solar company in value had its value increase 3% following COP21, but then 30% following the extension of the ITC. So, and you made the point that it's really what happens at the country level that's so critical. So which particular countries are you guys especially focused on trying to accelerate their growth because they have so much potential?
I think you're already seeing take Asia. You're seeing the level of ambition in China and India at massive levels. I mean, those are rates of deployment that we've never seen anywhere else. And all of this is additional capacity. It's not replacement of existing plant. In China, to some extent, coal is being phased out, and they're making more ambitious statements on ending coal. But those are huge markets. Actually, those markets are going to drive innovation and cost reduction even further. But in the rest of the Asia-Pacific region, if you look at the emerging economies of Southeast Asia, there is a discussion now about ASEAN interconnectivity, and interconnected, well-regulated electricity markets are going to create more opportunities to scale growth. So there, I think Asia is an extremely important part of this question. We think Africa has a unique opportunity to dramatically change its energy future. We issued a report last year about African renewable energy investment, and we expect the market to quadruple by 2030, grow by 4 times.
2030 or 30?
30. Latin America has some of the most innovative and rapid deployment processes. Countries like Uruguay, which already has electricity is almost 100% renewable from hydro, has moved very aggressively on wind and solar, and they're becoming a net energy exporter in the region at very low prices. So their wind and solar prices are extremely competitive with any conventional generation. Chile has probably achieved some of the lowest solar auction prices that we've seen so far, just over 4 cents kilowatt hour. Brazil is looking to continue its momentum on a clean energy system. So big markets in Latin America are also major opportunities. So I would say it's in general emerging economies, but the ones that have the higher growth in energy demand and higher rates of industrialization have the bigger opportunities.
So post COP21, one of the big risks is that some of the positive words are not turned into tangible action. So just for one perspective, so should MENA countries be setting peaking dates for carbon emissions like China has done?
I think big emitters, it makes sense for big emitters to look at peaking dates. The problem is that in many of those economies, it's an intensely political issue. And we're tied up with the climate negotiations, and it's politically difficult for them to achieve that in the short term. I expect that it will come in the long term, because the difference this time is that you're not waiting to see how the pious hopes of gathered politicians are going to be realized in the absence of an economic case. Today you have a business case for this transformation, and it's a positive business case. And everything we're saying about it, and all the evidence we're trying to put together about it, is about how positive this business case is. What is it going to do for employment? Renewables is going to be the fastest growing employment sector in most industrial settings. It's going to be much more employment intensive than conventional generation, and it has a huge impetus in terms of local economic growth and investment in countries. Renewables is also very much tied to social and economic conditions broadly in economies. I'm from Kenya. The thing that excites Kenyan policymakers is the potential for investments that can create youth employment. We have a lot of very smart, competent, educated young people on the job market who can't find jobs. And in any social setting where you have that kind of scenario, unless you are able to put these people into gainful employment, it's a recipe for social problems. So there are many things that are addressed by the renewable strategy that create a positive momentum.
I would sort of relate to my next. Last year, there was a Renewable Cities Global Learning Forum in Vancouver that I presented at, led a workshop for, moderated a panel for. And one of the interesting things coming out of it was some comments about how when they went into it, 100% renewables seemed a little bit, and afterwards they realized how important 100% renewable energy goals are because of the momentum they build in people's enthusiasm, people's ideas.
Yeah.
So you guys have partnered with the RE100 campaign. Can you talk a little bit about this campaign itself, how important you think it is, and just how important you think it is to have 100% renewable energy goals like Vancouver City has now?
I think about the goals, it depends on the setting. So if you have an industry setting, which is RE100, then the ambition of 100% renewable energy, which is feasible, is great, because you know that you can tell your shareholders that you're capable of achieving this in a certain period of time at a certain cost, and that cost will come down over time. So it makes absolute sense, and I applaud the leadership of IRENA and the other companies in RE100, because they are changing the mindset of decision makers who integrate large shares of power into their industrial operations. And it's a really powerful initiative in that sense. And it's absolutely great that they've pitched the ambition at 100%, and we know that it's achievable. In certain cities, it's also achievable. There are cities like Vancouver, Sydney, and others that have started taking very foresighted measures on energy utilization, production, and distribution in cities. And we know that it is feasible. They have the technology, they have the capital, they have the human resources to be able to do it. And what they're doing is actually charting the frontiers that are going to be demonstrating to others what's achievable. So I think that it's laudable that we have this 100% goal for some of the cities. For a number of countries, it's very different. And if you look at countries, and we discussed this at some length, if you start talking about 100 renewables in a number of countries where you have important industrial sectors and employment which is dependent on conventional energy, it gives a very mixed message. And it introduces uncertainty into what the implications at the national level are. So what the way we've approached the country level is to try to illustrate the possibilities for change, try to demonstrate what can be done by looking at the examples of those who have already moved dramatically in this direction. And
You're referring to your remap?
yes,
The remap
Yeah.
reports?
yeah, exactly. And to give them a sense that it's achievable in their own country with a positive net economic outcome. And I think that's the way to do it in countries.
But with cities like, for example, Vancouver, Sydney, it's still a big reach. The idea of 100% renewables is big, especially if they're including transport and heating. So it's a really big monumental task. Do you think it's still important for cities to make that 100% target to reach, just to get the momentum going and get the balls?
Absolutely. I think it's really important, and I think what some of the cities are doing is great, because what we've been saying is that it's become evident over the last 5 years or so that the power sector transformation is happening. There's nothing that will stop it. The power sector is going to go renewables sooner or later. And the technologies are there, we know what's happening. Innovation is going to lower the cost of storage. When we get that, we'll have another step change. When smart grid becomes a reality, different countries will have another step change when demand-side management happens, and so on. So, there's progression. The real problem is end-use sectors, and that's where oil is dominant. Transportation, heating and cooling, industry, you have applications for oil. And at a time of, I think oil was $27 last night. At a time of cheap oil at these levels, which might be sustained for a period of time, what does that do to people's ambition for end-use sectors? What does it do to your ambition for transportation, heating and cooling and so on? And I think having cities that even in this scenario are committed to a line of action that shows what's feasible is an extremely important demonstration effect for the others. So, I think it's very encouraging that cheap oil hasn't changed their scenario at all. We know that at one point oil will go up in price, but what it shouldn't do is at a period of low oil prices, we should not allow it to have a chilling effect on investment in innovation for end-use sectors and renewables. And the key there is going to be electric mobility. I think they basically put advanced biofuels on the back burner for the time being, but electric mobility has potential.
Well, that's my personal focus these days. 95% of I'm focused on electric mobility now, and I love highlighting that it's not about fuel costs, even environmental factors. It's the performance and convenience that I think will drive the revolution. But I really love that as a renewable energy agency, you include electric vehicles, because a lot of people talking about renewable energy don't even think about them. So thank you for talking about the importance, but what are you showing countries that they can do to advance this transition?
Most countries are going to be recipients of technology, not innovating or manufacturing. It's countries which have the capability to do that, like the US, China, Germany, and others, where you have to keep the momentum on looking at electrified mobility. I remember a very interesting conversation with a Chinese coal guy a couple of years ago. I said, yeah, we have lots of electric vehicles and they all run on coal. True. But if your power generation becomes renewable, then you have a very different scenario. So focusing on power, I think, is critical, first. Second, we know that the efficiency of electric motors compared to internal combustion is vastly superior. So the efficiency gains that will come from electric mobility are also evident as far as energy use and carbon emissions are concerned. And I think that people are beginning to realize this more and more. But the huge issue we face is that we've all grown up in a culture of the internal combustion engine, and it's very hard to switch your mind to what the implication of electric mobility will be. And I think we need to have clearer and clearer examples. And I think it was extremely significant. I'm on the jury of the Zayed Future Energy Prize, but giving the prize to BYD is a big signal.
Yeah.
I had breakfast with the chairman of BYD, and I can tell you that some of the things that they are looking forward to are immensely exciting. If you have China, which is the biggest automobile market in the world today, at some point begin to dramatically move towards electric mobility, which they've already done in cities with electrified buses, you will see the beginning of a change. Now you have more and more announcements that luxury car makers like Audi and Mercedes-Benz and BMW is looking at both hydrogen and electric. But these guys are now starting to really put some R&D dollars behind electric cars. Audi was the latest announcement yesterday. So they're looking at it in a very big way, and they have huge market share and they have huge prestige, and if they start to move, it will start to make changes. So as important as a change in technology and cost is, the culture change is important. A wonderful example here is, this is a very rich country, so you see a lot of Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Rolls Royces. I don't have one, unfortunately, but you see a lot of them around. People are actually, admire good engineering and good quality cars. They love it. But I know 2 or 3 people here who recently bought Teslas. They don't want to get out of their Tesla. They don't want to drive the Ferrari anymore.
I interviewed Akon yesterday. He used to have 28 cars, Ferraris, Lamborghinis. He got rid of all of them except 4 Teslas because they just drive so much better. So he just has 4 Teslas now. But I saw a Tesla at Emirates Palace. I was like, wow, Tesla right here in the UAE.
That belongs to Sultan Jabir.
Yeah? Ah.
Chairman of Masdar.
Ah.
He doesn't get out of it anymore.
But there's a great line from a sheikh from Saudi Arabia that says the Stone Age ended not because of a lack of stones, and the oil age will end not because of a lack of oil.
Sheikh Zaki Yaman, the first chairman of OPEC.
So we have
very
time for just
foresighted.
a few more questions, guys, just 2 more.
My company, Clean Edge, we've done a lot of research on the getting to 100% trend. And you talked about hydro, and you used the term sustainable hydro, which can obviously play a big role. How do you define sustainable hydro?
I think the problems of the past have been that when you move very fast to establish large hydro schemes that deliver large quantities of cheap power, the objective of those, especially in developing countries, was to build large reservoirs as quickly as possible. And in many of these settings, you had unique ecosystems, you had societies and lifestyles of communities that were impacted that were not accounted for. So it had very negative consequences. What we're beginning to see now is that more and more people are looking at smaller hydro integrated across the course of the waterway, looking at ways to build reservoirs that have limited ecological and social impact, have schemes associated with how do you create sustainable situations for affected populations and alternatives. And I think that's improving a lot. There are still issues, but it's improved dramatically. And I think it's very important, given the potential importance hydro has in a clean energy mix in the future, and the importance that hydro has as a balancing source for intermittency, that we do it right this time around. And I think that's why it's so important to have the sustainability issues at the center of this discussion. In my country, in Kenya, we had a big hydro scheme when I was a kid at school, and we were very proud about it. Kariba is being built, and this big thing is happening. It was multi-purpose power generation and irrigation. And the irrigation part was a disaster. First of all, you had upstream deforestation, and you had a rapid siltation of the reservoir. And then we had lack of drainage and lack of ecological management of the irrigated land, which led to loss of productivity of that land also. And those are expensive mistakes that we need to learn from and avoid in the future, because hydro does have a future. It's a question of making sure we know how to do it best.
And what do you think of the stock of green gas, some biomethane or some, is that again the gas industry trying to remain viable in this changing times, or is that something real?
I was in a panel once a little while ago, and actually it was when I just started my job. There was the Financial Times panel in London. There was nuclear, coal, oil, gas. Everybody was on the panel, and that was the first time renewables was there, and they were all on my case. And when they started talking about coal, somebody mentioned clean coal, I said, look, I only know of two types of coal: dirty coal and slightly less dirty coal. And you know, gas is gas.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again. I just want to thank you because you know, we were so deeply engaged in preparing this assembly and the politics around it and so on. The overwhelmingly positive coverage we received came a little bit as a surprise. So you guys did a great job. We really appreciate it. And thank you very much, and I hope that we continue to stay in touch and see more of it.
Did you have a picture with you?
Sure. Maybe you're gonna have to take a picture.
I can do it.
Maybe we can
Everyone
talk.
just gather on the side and I'll.
Maybe we found these scary people who has the ability to talk me into anything.
No.
When you're a bit rapist.
You know? I'm not a picture person. All right. 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more. Another one. Good. All right. And I'll send these to Ishra and she can forward them.
Excellent.
Right.
Where's that expensive camera we got you using?
It's not that big. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
guys, thank you very much.
The top speakers, so watch out for that.
Okay.
You guys, I also have hard copies here and digital report.
Entrance to the IRENA headquarters. So they have the exact same lecturing company and system here at Masdar City as we have in Wrocław. Same bikes, same design.
It's the first for-pearl construction rated building in the UAE.
The IRENA headquarters in Masdar City.
So from the outside, it looks shaded and it blocks about 90% of the sun's radiation and the heat. From the inside, it looks like there's no shading and it lets in a lot of daylight. So the film over the glass, so I think it's a specially designed glass. Exciting.
Is that known as electrochromic glass, do you know?
Ah.
It
I've
maybe.
seen